A rare glimmer of light in what has been some of Syria's darkest days. For the first time in nearly 6 months, humanitarian aid has been delivered to 4 besieged towns, reaching around 60,000 people. 70 trucks carrying food, medical supplies and winter clothes arrived in Medea, where many people have already starved to death. That's in addition to supplies reaching al-Zabadani near Damascus and Kafraya and Fua in the north. Deliveries had been suspended after a convoy was attacked by airstrikes last week.
It's really important to stress that this is like the health system has been slowly deteriorating in Syria for all these years. We are now in a situation where half of the hospitals, public hospitals, are either not functioning or are functioning only partially. Same for health centers. Lots of health personnel have left the country, and especially in a highly affected areas, we see really shortage of health workers. And then when you couple this with the chronic insecurity where patients and the health workers cannot reach their place of work, and when you think that only this year there were more than 70 attacks on health facilities that have been recorded, you get a picture.
Well, for the latest developments in Syria, we can speak to Alican Ayanlar, who's in Nizip refugee camp near Turkey's southern border. Alican, Boris Johnson, this is the UK's Foreign Secretary, is expected to visit the refugee camp where you are. What do we know about what's in store, and what does his visit actually mean?
Yes, Asha, that's right. The UK's Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson, is on the first day of his official 3-day visit to Turkey. And in about 30 minutes, he is expected to arrive here at the Nizip refugee camp inside the province of Gaziantep, right on the marketplace. Later, he is expected to meet with several families, refugee families within the camp. Now, these two camps in Nizip have been housing about 15,000 Syrian refugees for the past 4 years, and his visit is viewed as the UK's appreciation to Turkey's effort in housing, hosting, accommodating the more than 2.5 million refugees in the past 5.5 years. The UK's foreign secretary is also expected to meet members of the Syrian opposition while he is in Turkey. And all that we know is that they'll be discussing, quote, a range of issues. Now, Boris Johnson's visit comes on the back of that emergency session at the United Nations Security Council that was called by the UK, France, and the US. Nothing substantial came out of that, as expected. But the ambassador of the UK at the United Nations had mentioned that perhaps that the US-Russia track on Syria is at the end of its life. So Boris Johnson's visit, quite important, as we're expecting him in about 30 minutes. Asha?
Alican, we've been seeing pictures of aid being delivered to that refugee camp where you are. Those people seem to be in a much better situation than the Syrians across the border. Just remind us about the latest of aid on the aid delivery within Syria.
Just to add upon what you were saying, 71 trucks did deliver aid to about 60,000 people across 4 towns in Syria, Medea, Zabadani, Fua, and Kafraya. These are actually interagency aid deliveries, and there are actually 2 types of aids. One is cross-border aid delivery that's supervised by the United Nations. 40 trucks on the Turkish border that do belong to the United Nations are still waiting at the Turkish border, waiting to cross in. They've been waiting there since before this 7-day ceasefire that collapsed last week. This aid has been delivered to the suburbs of Damascus and the 4 towns that we just mentioned, to about 60,000 people. That is interagency aid, and that's been delivered. With regards to the situation in Aleppo, the situation continues to be dire. More than 250,000 people remain under siege over the weekend. Russian and Syrian warplanes bombed the city's main water pumping system, and as a precaution, officials in the east actually shut off the secondary pumping system to the west. Now, 2 million people in that city, Syria's largest city, are without running water. And UNICEF is saying that depriving children of water poses a catastrophic risk of waterborne diseases. So that on top of the fact that the Assad regime forces have captured the Handrat camp just north of Aleppo, overlooking Castello Road. That's the road that was supposed to be used to deliver aid into eastern Aleppo. The situation does not look good.
OK, Alican Ayanlar in Nizip. Thank you.